Abstract essay when ideas take shape, thoughts find depth, and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. One of his advocacy, teaching mindset, and creative strategy to go from broke to financial freedom. No other than Mr. David Webb.
Hey Daniel, how you doing?
I'm fabulous, Mr. David, and thank you so much for being part on Abstract Essay. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Sure. I'm Dave Webb. I'm the No Money Millionaire. I teach people how to buy real estate without having to use any of their own money, and a lot of times none of their own credit either.
Awesome. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. David.
Thank you.
Thank you. The No Money Millionaire: How I Built the Millions in Real Estate Without Using My Own Money. That will be our topic for today. Beyond tactics, what is the most critical mindset shift someone must take to even believe that acquiring a real estate without their own cash is possible?
I think that's the biggest part of it is changing that aspect of the mindset. That was what the hardest part for me was.
Interesting. So, walk us through the anatomy of your very first no money down deal. What specific strategy did you use, and what was the single biggest hurdle you had to overcome to get it close?
Well, the first no money deal I did, I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't even know it was possible. And so I was young, I was broke. I probably didn't even have a job at the time. Definitely my credit and I come from the inner city of Detroit. I come from Detroit, Michigan, and grew up in the poverty and the low income area. And so I went through the normal struggles. There wasn't anybody that were role models. You didn't see property owners. Nobody talked about passive income or any of that. So I was just going through the normal struggles of life. And I was visiting my father, and he told me he's gonna sell the home. And I said, "Well, I want to buy it." And he laughed at me. He said, "How are you gonna buy the house?" And he knew my situation, but I told him, "Yeah, I want to buy it." And so at that time, we had the yellow pages. And so I just picked up the phone. I didn't know where to begin. I'd never bought a home before. And so I just picked up the phone and started calling lenders, one after the next. And I'm getting turned down every single one of them. They're right off the bat. They're asking me the standards. Do you have the down payment? Do you have credit? And I said no. So they're like, why'd you even waste our time? And they're just hanging up one after the next. Well, I didn't let that stop me. I I stayed persistent, and I kept calling. I kept calling, and I kept calling. I don't know why. I don't know why I thought I'd get a different answer, but one after the next was all telling me the same stuff. But I did. I found one that said, okay, let's try to figure it out. And he's the one that showed me the creative structure to do this. So I didn't have credit. So he said, try to align with someone, try to bring someone in that might have the credit. And so I found my brother. So my brother came in and brought the credit. And so we partnered on the deal. And then my father, since we're buying the home from my father, the lender explained my father could gift equity to me, and then I could use that equity as my down payment. So I did a no money deal. I came into this without any money. I was fortunate because of the family relationship, but I was able to get that equity and use that as my down payment. Brought my brother in for the credit, and we were able to buy the home. So the biggest thing I had going for me in that one was my persistence. I was relentless. I just didn't stop. And had I stopped after the first 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 rejections, I would have accepted that and never had the home, but I didn't stop and I continued. And I found that one person that had the creative ideas, and we made it happen.
Persistence is the key to success. People try until you succeed. When you have no money, what becomes your primary currency? It is the ability to find a great deal, your skill in negotiating, your sweat equity, or your credibility.
You know, it's going to take some of all of that, but one of the biggest things is being able to find and recognize a good deal. And so, once you have that, when you can find the good deal, it's a lot easier to find the other pieces that goes along with it.
Mr. David, the phrase no money down often means the risk is shifted, not eliminated. How do you ethically and transparently structure deals so that the risk is fair for all parties involved, especially when you have no skin in the game?
You know, I use so with myself, I that first deal, I had my brother on the line, so so it was very important to me. And you have to just stay ethical, and you have to treat whoever you're bringing into this, how, if it's a private money or if it's a family you partnered with, whatever you orchestrate or bring together, you have to treat their money above and beyond yours. I make sure when I structure deals that the reward is matching their risk as well. So, if I have somebody that brought in 10% of the deal, and this is one that I just recently did. I had somebody that brought in 10% of the deal, but they're getting 30% of the profit. So, I didn't come out of pocket with any money. I just project management and orchestrated it, negotiated, put it all together. So a 70-30 split was more than sufficient. So they came out of pocket with a 10%, but in return they're getting 30. And then, they're backed by the asset as well. So going back to what you said about, what's one of the most important, and that's the deal. So when you have a great deal, somebody can be protected by that asset. And so if the deal is right, you're already, ahead of the game with equity that's going to be in the property. So not only are they going to get the reward to match their risk, they're also going to be protected by the asset as well.
Let's talk about the toolbox strategies and mechanics, Mr. David. Beyond traditional bank loans, what is your most powerful or most frequently used creative financing techniques?
I use hard money and I use private money with partners. Those are my primary, those two that I use. So hard money, I use a lot for fix and flips, something I know that I'm going to just hold on to for a short period while I'm renovating it and then flip it, because some hard money lenders will do 100% of the purchase price and the rehab. So I like to work with hard money lenders on that. And then I don't really have the partner per se that I have to be so concerned about or increase their share of the reward, because I'm just going through a structured lender, and they have a structured return, what their interest rate is, and so we all go into it with that up front. So I like to use hard money lenders on the fix and flips, but then on projects that I'm holding long term, I work with partners or private money, and I bring them in, and that way, we have the long term vision, and we both are rewarded from that. So those are my primary two that I use.
The subject to deep dive. This strategy is powerful. Powerful but often feared. How do you address a seller's legitimate concern about what happens to their existing loan and how they build enough trust to make this work?
For the seller,
Yes, please.
so maybe a like a seller finance deal. That's one that we just recently did was a seller finance, and normally what you find on a seller finance, they get protected because usually they end up selling the home for more than they would if they did it traditionally and somebody came with the loan and was able to do the mortgage or whatnot. And that way people normally negotiate the asking price downward. But when you come in and you're doing a seller finance, especially if you have low upfront monies that you're bringing to the table, then the seller's usually getting a higher purchase price. And so they get rewarded as that way.
Mr. David, in competitive market, finding a truly motivated seller is the key. What are the less obvious signs of a motivated seller that most beginners overlook?
One of the things that I look for is houses on market for a long time. Right now I'm in the process of creating my next video that I put out on YouTube, and it's talking about, Zillow. A lot of people you'll hear a lot of people talk negatively about Zillow, about that you can't find good deals on there. Everything on there is retail. But about five of the last deals I've done this year, um, a couple $1 million worth, almost $5 million worth of property, I did it all from Zillow. And what I did was just look for properties that's been on the market a long time. One of the properties I purchased had been on the market almost a full year. And so, those are motivated sellers. And another place you can look for motivated sellers, if you make relationships with real estate agents, then you can ask them to look up what's called expired listings. And those were people who tried to sell their homes but never did for whatever reason. And they ended up just coming off of the for sale list, coming off the market. And so you can follow up with them and find out if you can negotiate a deal that way, because they for whatever reason tried to sell their home or property and did not. So they tend to be motivated as well if you can come with the right proper structure.
How do you craft an invincible offer for a seller that is not just about price? What is the narrative or the value you're selling them on beyond the dollar amount?
Well, I mean, it can be a lot of things. The one property that we just recently did, I mentioned, we were bringing rehab to that. So I helped somebody who came into that with no money out of pocket, but they negotiated to do renovations as their down payment. So and the seller was protected because they didn't completely transfer the deed over until the renovations had been completed till they were satisfied. So, a lot of times they're able to see their property come to be renovated and beautified, and something new life given to it. And a lot of people love to see that with the property. Even though they're selling it, they love to see somebody come in with some new energy and bring new life to it and bring it back to what they knew it could be. So that's one of the things I see that kind of motivates people as well.
Mr. David, when and how should someone bring in a money partner? And what does a fair deal structure look like when you're providing the sweet equity and they providing the capital?
Well, I mentioned one already. I had somebody come in with 10%, but I negotiated that they get 30% of the profit. And so, you know, I I just look I do my research, and that's what's important. You have to be able to really identify the deal, what you can make out of it, and what it will support. to be able to pay out. And then you just structure an attractive return for whatever they're bringing in. So um, I'm a big fan of working with private money or partners, and I like to see everybody win. I like to see everybody, gain from a property and be very happy with the outcome. They're just going to want to work with you more and more after that. So I just try to make sure everybody's getting an attractive return on what they put in. So if somebody's bringing in capital, a good return is definitely anything over 12%, over 1% a month. That's a good return. So you start giving numbers above and beyond that, well, that's a really healthy return for just putting in money. And then on my end, or on anybody else that's going to do the project management and everything all the way through, they get rewarded as well, because they didn't have to come out of pocket with money. But that doesn't belittle their work or their investment as well, with sweat equity and time and everything else. So I think as long as it's a fair structure and people are getting a really good return, I think everyone's happy.
The realities and the roadblocks, Mr. David. How do you respond to the skeptic who says, if this so easy, why is not everyone doing it? What are the hidden challenges or the specific hard work that this model requires?
Well, it may sound easy, buy property without any money, but that's the furthest from what it is, and it's getting, a little harder and harder as time goes on, because a lot of people are flooding to this market, now. A lot of people are coming into multifamily and coming into real estate. So the more and more that people come into it, um, the less opportunities that are out there to be divided. So you have to be relentless in your search. So that it again, it may sound easy to be too good to be true, no money out of pocket, but the amount of work that it takes to make this happen, to pull this off, is definitely far from easy. But it's very doable and it's rewardable. And and me, I love it. I enjoy it. I love taking a property, seeing the vision and renovating it and seeing it come through all the way to the end, and everything that I had projected, see that come to fruition. It's extremely enjoyable. So what do they say? You have to love what you do, and then if that's the case, you can't really call it work. But it's not easy. And when you are working with other people's money, you have to treat that above and beyond your own. So you're working even harder, because you want to protect somebody else's money more than you would even want to do your own. So you're working even harder at it. So it might sound too good to be true, but the amount of work and everything that goes into it really makes it pay off.
Indeed. And Mr. David, what is the most common deal killing mistake aspiring no money investors make when trying to put their first transaction together?
Could you give that back to me, Daniel?
What is the most common deal killing mistake aspiring no money investors make when trying to put their first transaction together?
Oh, yeah, underestimating time, underestimating the budget. Um, those are some of the biggest things. Buying a property too high. There's lots of things that you have to be aware of and cautious of. And you know, I lost money on a deal early on, and it still haunts me. If I had that property today with everything I know now, I could just it would have been such a home run. But I didn't know then, and so when I went to sell it, the realtor said to me, he said, "Dave, you make money on these properties when you buy." And so I knew what he was telling me. I knew that I was about to take a loss on that property, and I did. And it was an expensive lesson, but that's one you have to make sure you can buy a property right, because buying it wrong right from the beginning is going to short you. And you have to be able to anticipate your budget, calculate your budget, and you have to calculate for unseen issues, problems. And so those are the biggest hurdles or pitfalls that you have to avoid.
At least you learned from your mistake, Mr. David. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast law 101 and mental health 101. Love Letters in third season, a movie 101 review, music 101 in fourth season, and science 101 and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. David, beyond the millions, what is the most valuable lesson you've learned about wealth, freedom, and yourself by building it in unconventional way?
Well, I mean, you mentioned it. It's the freedom. It's when you're coming out of when you're poor and you're trying to get yourself out of that, you you see the fancy cars and the brand name clothes and all of those and jewelry, and you can't wait till you can have those things. But what it really comes down to is the freedom to be with your family, the freedom to be able to come and go as you need to. I was a single father, and this was a real instance that I was faced with. My son was in school, and he was very active, and he had, I think it was a, I don't know, it was a school play or program, and he really wanted me to be there to watch him. He worked real hard on it, and he really wanted me to be there to watch him. And I was faced with I either was going to lose my job to go, or I had to miss it to be able to keep my job. And at that time I had to keep my job, so I wasn't able to go and see it. And my son, I was his only parent that was going to be there. And so it was a horrible decision, and people are faced with that stuff all the time. And that's what wealth can give you. Wealth can give you the freedom of your time and being able to be there with your family when you need to, whether it's for health reasons or any reason. You're able to have your time and your freedom. And that's what wealth, to me, that's what wealth gives you.
Mr. David Webb, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Sure. Well, for all your listeners right now, Daniel, you can get my book for free. You can go to nomoneymillionaire.com, and I have it set up as a free download right now for any of your listeners. And then, you can Google me. Just Google No Money Millionaire. You're going to find me. I'm at Facebook, YouTube. I have my No Money Millionaire, podcast, everything. Just Google it. You'll find me.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. David Webb, because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering advocacy to come. So, Mr. David, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I appreciate being here.
Maricon people, see you soon.